All right, everyone, let's get started. My name is Alex Connors. I work for NS1 here today, and we have with us Hasib Bhutani from Rafay Systems. Hasib is the CEO and co-founder for Rafay. Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items. We have the chat available for questions at the end. We will be recording today's session. You'll get a downloadable version or an on-demand version after the webinar later this afternoon. And as I said, you feel free to pop questions into the chat at any point. We're happy to answer questions at the end. So we're super excited about today. As I said, we have Hasib Bhutani here today. He is the co-founder and CEO of Rafay Systems. We've been talking a lot about microservices and containerization for many, many years, but Hasib and the Rafay team created a platform to help drive this adoption. Rafay provides a turnkey SaaS platform that automates lifecycle management and ongoing operations for these containerized applications in the cloud and on-prem. So welcome, Hasib. Do you want to tell us a little bit about you and your background and a little bit more about Rafay?
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Really excited to talk to everybody here. So Rafay is what I think 18-month-old company at this time. Seed-funded organization with a number of marquee VCs here in the Bay Area. Many of us in the company come from companies such as Akamai, VMware, Comcast, Mobile Iron, Citrix. So a number of us have experience in infrastructure security and have experience running distributed systems from our prior lives. And our prior experience, particularly around distributed systems, is a critical component of the approach we've taken to solve this problem that we're addressing here at Rafay, as well as why we have found such a unique way of solving a critical problem that every company seems to be facing. We have been working with a number of companies, enterprises, as well as telcos over the last 6-7 months now, and we'll be making the platform generally available at some point next month.
Cool. So let's jump in. It's funny when we talk about containers. I remember a few years back landing at VMworld. I think it was 2016, and all of the analysts, you would be expecting to talk about cloud and virtual machines, and all anyone wanted to talk about at that show was containers. And I think it was, indicative of where the market's going. So to set the scene, obviously container adoption today is a large market, and Hasib, this is something you and your team have seen a lot of. But what else have you guys learned as Rafay has, expanded and built your business?
Yeah, the numbers are large and getting larger very fast. I think the market is seeing, I think, a 35% year-over-year growth here. But at the same time, there are these underbelly challenges that are being exposed as enterprises are adopting containers. And I think the data on the right side of the slide here is very important for everybody to think about, which is when adopters of containers and Kubernetes, which is the preeminent orchestration platform out there, are asked the question, hey, what are your biggest concerns? The top 3 concerns that the practitioners bring up are lack of expertise, operational complexity, and security. Essentially, what this is describing is that although the promise of containerization is exactly what it is, which is it really simplifies the way applications are built and deployed, maintaining them on an ongoing basis, running the operations and really the life cycle of a containerized application across multiple clusters is a really hard problem to solve. And this is what the industry is struggling with today. And that's really the gap we saw at Rafay, given our prior experience, and we decided to focus on that as a business.
Yeah, it's very true. We were talking about that just this week. So, we know the value that containers bring in a world driven by DevOps, and as DevOps teams are expanding and becoming even more prevalent, and they're, DevOps teams are always trying to do more with less and innovate in real time. And we know containers are invaluable as companies large and small are building these automated and orchestrated environments. But when you think about containers, it comes down to 3 things, right? Smaller footprint, speed of delivery, and faster iteration on these applications within these containers. But Hasib, you know, this is a long list of things that's required to run these environments efficiently. And can you just talk a little bit to where Rafay is helping solve this problem?
Yeah. You know, before we talk about Rafay, one thing that I think is well understood by all the practitioners who are listening to this conversation today is that an application is not just a container or multiple containers. The applications are containers and configuration and keys and deployment models and intent around business goals. And hey, my container changed again because somebody wrote new code, and then my config changed again, and then something broke. It's a whole number of things that have to be thought about. And getting things up and running kind of day zero is one thing, but maintaining things on an ongoing basis is a non-trivial challenge. And these are, you know, this list here on the screen, it identifies some of the first blush problems. You know, it doesn't even cover probably the gamut of things that need to be done by DevOps team today, but they describe some high-level challenges such as, for example, if there are secrets such as private keys that need to be deployed across clusters, somebody in the enterprise is now thinking about, well, how do I do that? And somebody in DevOps has probably implemented something to make it happen. Maybe they took some open source, maybe they purchased a solution, but net, they had to go think about that specific problem and then solve it as a point product issue. And then they go to the next problem and solve that, and on and on and on and on. Eventually, all of these companies end up with a platform that they own in-house, and they now own it and forever. So the care and feeding of this platform is now the responsibility of this company. This company could be selling shoes online. This company could be a security company. But all of these companies, doesn't matter what you do online, doesn't matter what your business is, you now own a platform. And that is what the enterprises out there, the companies out there are reacting to and saying, why are we living life this way? There has to be a better way to do this.
Yep. It's very true. We almost underestimate the problem, right?
Exactly.
So let's dig into a little bit about why what Rafay is solving and how you kind of came to this conclusion of this need.
Sure. I referred to the phrase day zero earlier. And if I may double click on that and also talk about, well, what day one and day two might mean. So day zero to us is about basic application deployment and bringing up clusters where the applications might be running. And predominantly, these clusters are going to be Kubernetes clusters. Now, in the industry today, there are a number of solutions available, managed services, in fact, available from public cloud providers and others, where your cluster can be brought up on your behalf as a service. It's very good. I mean, it's a really, really good starting point, because as recently as probably 2 years ago, people were doing all this work themselves. But the state of the industry today is that if you use AWS or GCP or Azure or any one of these platforms, you are now able to bring up a cluster, use one of a multitude of solutions to use a pipeline and get your code into the cluster, basically. And then you're on your own. So writing the Kubernetes scripts, getting applications up and running, solving for secrets and configuration, figuring out how to actually run your clusters, because nobody has one cluster, they have multiple clusters. How do we run them in a synchronized fashion, if you will? If I am running my applications across multiple regions in Amazon, well, what does that mean to me for my deployment policies? How do I upgrade my code? All of these things fall into two buckets, day one and day two. Day one being operations and scaling of the application, and then day two being the life cycle, meaning the application changes, right? No application is going to be static forever. Config's going to change, and the code's going to change, and other things will change. So how do you keep your environments shipshape and up to date? That today is effectively a manual effort. And companies have done incredible work in building these internal platforms in-house. So they've written a lot of code in-house to build all this stuff. In some cases, if you're Google or Facebook, there's a competitive advantage to building these things. If you are in maybe a smaller company than those two and are in a competitive market, The real question is, do you want to continue to invest in building these in-house platforms and then take care of the care and feeding of these platforms yourself forever? Or would you rather have your, the top-notch engineers in a company, instead of them working on infrastructure, would you rather have them work on the product so that the company can be more successful? And that's where Rafay comes in. We provide a SaaS platform to solve for day one and day two operations for our customers.
So Rafay is helping companies. Their companies are relying on Rafay to manage the innovation of their infrastructure while giving their teams the ability to continue innovate. It sounds painless and it sounds perfect, right? But customers love Rafay and you make it look so easy, but as you came across this challenge, as all good tech does, things come up, right? Can you explain a little bit about what you needed as you started growing to make your customers successful?
Yeah, and even for us, as we have spent the last 17, 18 months, very emphatically making sure we talk to a lot of customers and get data. One of the things I had done some time ago was I ended up writing a blog about the not so obvious things about deploying applications across public and private environments. And that blog in itself was I think a summary of my prior experience and the team's prior experience, as well as what we are seeing out in the market. And in this blog, I outlined all the hard things one must do to manage and run applications on a global scale. Some companies with infinite resources, like I said before, they've figured this out, right? Google's got this covered, Uber's got this covered, maybe Salesforce has got this covered, but there's another, thousands and thousands of companies out there who continue to work on these problems. And like you said earlier, if there's an opportunity for these companies to focus on what is more important to the business, which is the product, instead of having, smart engineers, essentially, which is a scarce resource in our industry, work on infrastructure challenges, that is a better solution for them. But to do this easily, making things easy is really hard. We thought about a lot about, what is it that we need to deliver to our customers, and we outlined 4 fundamental things that we thought we had to do. A distributed container platform, and we've talked about that on this call already, which is the front and center kind of feature of the platform. But the other 2 things that we've spent a lot on thinking about are global traffic management and then placement of applications dynamically in the right place at the right time. And these are very important because nobody's got a single cluster. As an example, if your company is dealing with compliance requirements, you may find yourself deploying applications in maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 locations globally to meet the regional requirements, the sovereign requirements of the countries in which you operate, in which case now your application is running in multiple locations. In that case, how do you make sure that an end user on the internet, when that user interacts with your application, that user's device is directed to the right application, which could mean the application in country, or that could mean the closest server that is serving this application. Those are 2 different things. So how do you make those decisions, and how do you make them happen seamlessly for our customers? And that's really where our partnership with NS1 has allowed us to make very fast progress, where not only can we help our customers simplify the ongoing operations and lifecycle of their containerized applications, but we can also help them think through and operationalize traffic management, steering, and placement for their workloads across the globe.
Yeah, definitely. NS1 was built to solve just that, right? In a world where things are becoming container-based and next-gen technology is really critical for, some of the world's largest and smallest companies. NS1's really solving that problem, and our customers require this model to get their customers to the best POP at the right time, right? So this
absolutely.
Yeah, and this dedication to customer success, I think, is what makes our relationship with Rafay so important. So do you want to talk a little bit about how NS1's technology kind of changed the experience for your customers and your team?
Oh, absolutely. So the team here, when we first started building the platform, before we even engaged with NS1, they had essentially outlined what they would need from a DNS provider in order to do what we wanted to do on behalf of our customers, which is really, operationalize this entire environment in a very seamless fashion. And the team here spent a fair bit of time looking at a number of solutions out there. So a number of us used to work at a very large CDN prior to Rafay, so we have some experience in the space. The team concluded that NS1 was the right platform. There are a number of reasons why NS1 was the right platform, but I will highlight two here because those probably are the most critical ones. The first and foremost one is in this day and age, it seems simple, but sometimes it's hard, just API support. So for us to be able to programmatically influence the response that a user gets when they do a DNS lookup is very, very important. And we cannot live in a world where every response is statically configured. It's not going to work for us. It's not going to work for our customers. NS1 provides us an API layer that, API is everybody's god, but being able to influence the response in a very dynamic, in a very timely fashion is very critical to how our platform behaves and operates. And NS1 was the best solution out there that we have found to solve this problem. And definitely very happy with the experience we've had so far. And the second thing is this, and so this is a technical topic, and folks on the call who may not be NS1 customers, I would recommend that you look up filter chains on the NS1 website and what it's all about. So at a very simplistic level, the idea behind filter chains is that one can programmatically describe a set of checks that a user's request must go through before it is determined as to how to respond to that check. So think of this as a graph that you're walking down to make a decision as to what to tell a user. And filter chains are critical to our business in how we respond to customers. So for example, a customer or an end user who happens to be in India right now and who happens to be accessing a website for a US company, as an example. Well, that user wants the best experience. So we need to make a number of decisions in real time and make sure that this user is directed to a web property for that application that happens to run in India or close to India, so that this end user gets a good experience. So that's one use case. But in the same country, the same user may now be accessing an application that belongs to a bank, and that user's traffic cannot leave India. So even if there's a better response available from a location that maybe is not in India, cannot leave India, as an example. So then you have to have different rules for different applications and different users and different geographies. And that is what filter chains enable for us. And that is a very, very powerful feature. This is something that we are very proud of in how we built this for our customers. And most importantly, between the NS1 and our Rafay platforms coming together, this is a critical need for every global company. And we're able to deliver this great solution to our customers very easily because we have NS1 as a partner.
Yeah. And, to add to that filter chain, and Hasib, I've heard many people explain it, but you did a really great job. To add to the filter chain and, the geo-targeting and geo-fencing, I think that from a technology standpoint, it gives NS1 customers and NS1 users the ability to have control of where their traffic goes, but also confidently scale out to make sure that, it's not jeopardizing where your traffic goes, right? So I think the banking example that you just used is critical, because how do you make sure that they get to the right POP, but also still remain in compliance? And that's really, really important. And especially doing that in an automated and real-time way for Rafay, it's critical to your business. And again, it just highlights this benefit that we've seen with applications being moved to container environments and leveraging orchestration. The last thing I want to touch on a little bit is Rafay's benefits, right? So we all understand the technical benefit, right, of Rafay and the solution, but there's the outcomes of what Rafay provides touches more than just, your DevOps team. So Hasib, I know you work with a ton of your customers, right? Can you talk to a little bit about those other groups within organizations that are really feeling the positive business outcomes of using Rafay?
Absolutely. For for a solution to be strategic to a company, to a business, it has to be appreciated and understood by multiple people in that company, not just maybe the DevOps team or not just maybe the developers in a company. And we take that idea seriously, and we do spend a lot of time trying to understand, why do people care? And what do they really care about? What are they looking for? So when it comes to a line of business owner, the person who is fundamentally responsible for delivering an application, setting aside the technology that goes with it, what do they care about? They care about time to market. They want to be up and running now. And if they have to wait for DevOps to deliver a solution, because this is a non-trivial problem where solutions like Rafay do not exist, DevOps teams have to go build it themselves. Look, they don't have a choice. Whether we exist or not, they have to solve this problem anyway, right? The real question is, would you like to continue to invest in your own internal platforms, which is fine, you could do that. And that takes time and effort and scarce engineering resources. Or would you rather work with a platform like Rafay's and be up and running today? And that's what the benefit appears to be to the line of business owner. Now, the DevOps/Ops teams, end of the day, they are the consumer of this platform, broadly speaking. What do they care about? So what they care about is, look, end of the day, they also have a job to do, right? They have to deliver on the promise of, hey, we're going to help your applications run anywhere, to the developer and to the line of business owner. And to them, we are delivering a level of visibility and control across all of their environments, be it cloud or on-premise, that today is a high bar. It's a bar that they have to reach with their own internal efforts. And a bunch of open source and a bunch of tools that they have to cobble together to build some sort of a platform in-house. And again, same thing applies. And it's a very simple conversation with our customers. Hey, you have a very capable set of engineers in your organization, but there's always more work to do. Is this where you want to spend your time on this infrastructure problem, which essentially is the same across companies, or would you rather have the visibility and control and then focus on things that are strategic to the business? And the answer predominantly is, yeah, I want to focus on the things that make my company be more successful. And that's where we help the operations team. And finally, the developer. The developer shouldn't even see us, really, right? They should have effectively a serverless experience, which is I write code, I check in my code gets built, and now it's running in a number of environments. I don't have to think about it anymore. Particularly when it comes to these three buckets, we spend a lot of time thinking about two ideas as we think about product management here. One is abstractions, and the other one is interfaces. If we build the right set of abstractions, which we have here by simplifying Kubernetes, for example, and really providing operations and DevOps, this layer that sits across their environments, right? That's a win for them. But then for the developer, the question is, what is the right interface? So the right interface for the developer is actually Git push. They should write code, they should check it in, they should forget about everything else. And that's the experience we deliver to them by way of the platform that has been built here at Rafay. So we must think about all three constituencies, and we must make sure all three have the right experience and the right outcomes.
Yeah. So it's hard to do, right? It's hard to articulate to the developers that this product is also going to solve the business owner's problem as a way to kind of, work across the entire organization to drive change. But you guys have done a really good job of accomplishing that. Again, thank you to everyone for joining us today. We're going to open it up for Q&A, so feel free to pop any of your questions into the chat to the panelists. We have at least 5, maybe more, a little more time. Okay, it looks like we have one. So Hasib, this one's for you. Can you describe in more technical detail how Rafay uses NS1's DNS service as part of the Rafay platform?
Sure. So I described earlier our use of filter chains and the APIs and the notion of how we use geofencing and so on. So I'll pick an example to talk about how we're using NS1 and use another feature that we use also in some cases. So consider a scenario where a customer is running let's say a cluster in Singapore and another cluster in Korea, South Korea. And at this instant in time, all users in that part of the world, maybe most of those users are in India or Singapore, they're all essentially going to the cluster in Singapore, and everything is good. And now you see a spike of traffic. Eventually, you can auto-scale your clusters to a certain point in Singapore, but at some point, you probably have a policy that says, don't auto-scale forever. So what happens next? What do you do with these users who are now going to get a bad experience? Well, you can shed load to this other cluster running in Korea, which means they may get a slightly higher latency, but at least they get a reasonably good experience. So this notion of load shedding is a feature we built that is leveraging a number of features in the NS1 platform. For example, the health check features and the probes that NS1 exposes on the platform, so that once the Rafay platform determines that, okay, well, the Singapore cluster is effectively running out of capacity, it's hitting some high water mark, it starts shedding load at the DNS level to Korea and starts moving things very, very quickly. So we need that reaction to be very timely. This cannot take minutes even. This has to happen like right now, because we already hit a high watermark. And NS1 allows us to, as an example, implement a load shedding feature across clusters globally without our customers having to get involved. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to provide an automation SaaS service. We don't want to be in the business of our customers, DevOps and Ops teams, coming to our system and saying, go make it happen. It should just happen. Because the intent from the customer was, if I have two clusters, I need you to now manage them by yourself. And we do that, and NS1 enables us to do things like that are really powerful for our customers.
Yeah, that's great. And adding on to that, it looks like we have one more. Can you describe a little bit more about day 2 operations and how Rafay leverages NS1 for that functionality?
Sure. All right. So maybe a good use case to think about is upgrades. Everybody's got to upgrade their code. We don't have a choice, unfortunately. So let's say somebody's running a number of clusters, and now new code is available to upgrade across these locations. And maybe you've decided that you want to do some sort of a canary upgrade, which means I'm going to pick one of my clusters, or maybe a node in a cluster, and then I'm going to upgrade that code in that cluster, test it for a while, and then when I'm comfortable, I'm going to roll this code out across the platform. Now, Rafay as a feature provides rolling upgrades as well as canary upgrades as part of the platform. So our customers don't have to go build those features or implement complex policies and scripts across their network. We do it as part of the platform. But then when it comes to upgrading, so once we move the code around, we still have to think about the user. There were users who were going to a cluster that just got upgraded. What happens to their traffic? So we have to be able to shift things around as and when upgrades are happening, and really kind of have the traffic follow the new code as it's being deployed globally. Right? So it's almost like code comes up, and then for a while, maybe that cluster may see no traffic, and then traffic again, and on and on. So we want to make sure that no user hits a cluster where where the code isn't being upgraded maybe at this instant in time, because otherwise they'd have a bad experience. So as part of the platform, we want to make sure that no end user gets that experience. They all get the right experience. We wait for traffic to be shedded before clusters are upgraded, and that is a day 2 operation as one example. There are many such things, and in this we have to think of traffic management and steering as part and parcel of the application. Because going back to something I said earlier, an app is not just a container. It's not. It's containers and config and keys and traffic. If we don't think about traffic cohesively with the application where it's running right now, we will run into scenarios where you have blackouts in certain regions, and that is absolutely not acceptable. NS1 helps us solve that problem.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. That was a really, really good answer. Very thorough. So I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you so much for joining us today on behalf of the NS1 team. Hasib, I know that your time is sparing. with a lot of the work that the Rafay team is doing. One thing, if you're listening to this on demand, please feel free to send questions to events@ns1.com, and our team and the Rafay team will get back to you with responses as soon as possible, within one day. But if you have any other questions or follow-up, feel free to reach out to us at NS1, or also reach out to the Rafay team at eval@rafay.co. Thank you again for joining us on this great Tuesday afternoon. And with that, we are going to call it quits. Have a good day.
Thank you.